Alrighty, so Glider Tech explanation. Uh, the next one. This is number two. So, uh, I debated whether or not I wanted to do this because it seems like it'd be really dangerous to have a bunch of people nearly 70,000 feet in the air going over Mach. So I didn't really want to give them the full picture. But it's like, okay, so here's how like you actually have to kind of run this system, and most of you most likely aren't a person that would know, and you'd call bullshit and it wouldn't work with how it is you described, and it's kind of like on purpose. So but anyways, what I'll tell you is it's like, all right, so I have to describe the wing thing on the tips first and foremost. One of them is basically just going to try and elongate the lower pressure zone and cut it off with a slight curved, perpendicular point at the top, and then this is going to go into a vertical in line with the flow of air, parallel kind of, point, right? But it's going to be shaped quite a bit differently. Think like an S almost. Like, those old, sharp S's that you'd draw on, like, notebook paper because you were bored in class. It's kind of like that, okay? But like the bottom is effectively going to, again, it's like instead of perpendicular-ish, it's more flat, but it's going down flat, but it's curved up to the very tip. The other one at the top, however, is a T that then curves counterclockwise if you're looking from behind towards the wing, and the one at the bottom is curving clockwise if you're looking towards the wing from the back, right? And then they join in like that. And the reason why you want that is because if you allow for a little wing extension there, just a smidge, it then draws in side air that then fills in the wingtip vortice and allows for that to no longer be there at very high altitudes, speeds, and low speeds, which is great. You don't want to do that. That's wasted, energy effectively to create a vortex, right? And it just delays its vortex, and but then it delays it such that it's curving it in towards itself to the point where now there's no ability for a vortex to form, which is the reason why it works. So we got to start there, right? Then we're going to go into the engine. The engine is a multitude of different than you probably expected. There's a outside battery. There's an inside acoustic resonance pump, sure, but there's a vacuum between the two, and there's an exhaust manifold and a separator and for that, which is a substrate material, which you have to pump like a fuel cell your soda popped, or otherwise known as pressurized acetylene inside of a liquid refrigerant, which has been done before. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because we're pushing nitrogen filtration through this. And then as it goes through, we'll take a little bit of that oxygen and combine it with the nitrogen, and we'll get nitric oxides. But we're also going to, with a series of electricities, the substrate material, which electricity just turns into positive, negative charges and shit like that, and there's a little bit of electromagnetic fields, effectively all that really is, truthfully. But that also means that it rips current. There's a high amperage there. And that means on the other side goes oxygen, and on the other side there's an ionic, now newly formed, under pressure, differently phased, similar to a nitromethane acetylene and refrigerant, which is a carbon something. It's like the fluorocarbon refrigerant, but it's slightly different apparently. Instead of a hydrocarbon long chain, it's more of like a slight, like a methane almost structure, but it's got these little weird, like, pointy, sticky out antenna things on a couple of them. And it was used. It's still used now. You can buy it, but like it's not really flammable. That's the whole point. But it's like once you put acetylene around, and once you run it through this as a reaction, you get a with the oxygen and some of the nitric oxides will dump off, and they still form nitric oxides, right? But then oxygen will form on this, and it creates a fuel oxidizer combo that is also a potent explosive, but not really. It's deflagration instead of detonation levels, which is fine. That's a-okay, because I'm about to turn it into a detonation from the now turned into a plasma oxygen rich inside of the center, which then has an ionic on the outside tube of this that is accelerated using both thermodynamic, sure, but ionic electrostatic Lorentz, like magnetohydrodynamic, but instead it's not. Like, I don't need to use magnets. Instead, I use Z-pinch currents for the plasma, and I use electrostatic forces for the ionic that then accelerate it like a coil railgun as potential field forces interact. Which means also, because I can change the size and diameter of the tube, which is the piezoelectric I talk about, which changes its size and shape and inner diameter and outer diameter. And I can cool it using the refrigerant and acetylene together, which will not explode, which is nice. It needs oxygen. They need something to react with, and they don't react with each other, which is good, right? Kind of want that. Anyways, cools it off, preheats it, gets it done, goes towards the kind of combustion chamber. It's more of like a bell end. It combines into a combustion chamber mix. So it goes into like a funnel squeeze nozzle point that goes into a wider kind of ish teardrop shape, but it's more of a multitude of parabolic curved spikes. So like an arrow spike kind of thing. But it's really just like a hollow one and then one on the outside, and then they'll combine. They'll race towards each other. You gotta put like these little waveguide kind of arrangements, which means you cut effectively a little bit of a see-through slot, and then it curves towards the tip for a waveguide formation. That causes a wicking, and that causes it to then try and form, and then it goes off into the rest of the chamber, and then that goes and gets bent back towards a hypervelocity chamber, which is just a funnel. It's a parabolic funnel, right? But now it's then reacted, and nitric oxide wants to go and explosively decompress, because there's already kind of a fuel oxidizer, like a monopropellant, like a nitromethane, right? It then also happens to burn an explosive decompression, and with more fuel there to burn, which it does do that. Because it's basically like a nitroacetylene polymerized kind of compound that's in there in the ionic state it's in under pressure. It's like, how does it do that? I'm like, well, you're probably not a person I could talk to because you're not a fucking chemistry expert, but that's effectively what it is. It's doing that. If you didn't know that, then it's like, I can't tell you what that is. Because it's that. There's fuel, and then there's a reactant, and then it goes burn as chemical potential, which is kinetic potential, as electrons transfer from the bonds that they're in the phases of those bonds, and then they elicit a excitation of exothermic energy. So, like, if you don't know what combustion is, then you're probably someone I can't talk to about this. Because I'm literally saying it's combusting. I've been saying that the entire time. Anyways, goes into the nozzle, right? That's where the prop is, but okay, that prop is going to spin, sure, right? But that's actually going to spin much faster, so it's going to re-accelerate it. And then it has another bell end. That's the actual real bell end. That's kind of like a thrust vector. And then the rudder in the rear, or whatever it's called, that's a T. So one vertical, and then there's a horizontal at the bottom, because I don't want this fucking hot ass shit anywhere near my legs. So there's that going on. And then there's piezoelectric across the skin of the hang glider, which you probably didn't get to, but that means a large amount of the forces of vibration that are, something that you generally speaking can't recapture are now being recaptured efficiently. Now I can't I can't get more, but it goes back into thrust, right? There's cooling, but there's also electrostatic, right? Which is fine. And as it vibrates towards the bell end with the electrostatic and the piezoelectrics, that allows for me to get a more intake force along with the ram air that's going on too for the acoustic resonance pumps. As it rotates faster for the prop, I then get more and more efficiency the faster and faster I get. Solar panels, of course, exist. There's batteries not just in the tube frame and also the skin, along with the solar panels that are there. It also means that like the cocoon in the ear, shroud, like the windscreen at the front that you're gonna have to sit yourself into, is also something that happens to have batteries. And of course, the refrigerant can still help cool you. There's piezoelectrics in that as well. And the electrostatic forces help as well with recapturing some of that energy lost. It's not going to do more than what you put in, but it's still a damn good efficient vehicle. The reason why I didn't want to tell people about this was because it's like, well, for the meme, sure, but also I don't know if you want to be at near 70,000 feet going over Mach, as the air traffic control and FIA or whatever it is like, can you fuck off? Can you stop, stop doing, Meanwhile, I'm stalling, the top wing. Like that's a good thing because the faster you go in the higher altitude, that produces effectively a better lower pressure. But like the the engine is like a bi-wing, which means it's very elongated and it funnels down into this one small spot in the rear, right? But that also means it acts like a secondary delta that you're just underneath. And so it can cool you and it's structural, sure. Like the wind going over here and cool the batteries too and all that. But it's also that it's traveling between two surfaces. And so if you place, because you need to cool the batteries that are also in the wing structure above, then you get like a diffuser kind of thing that allows for you to suck in a little bit and then have it expand, and that creates its own kind of lift. And so you get basically another version of two lifting body characteristics, which are great for higher altitudes and higher speeds because it basically combines it such that the rear rudder doesn't get blown to smithereens as the top wings stall then combines with the bottom wings kind of stall, and then that becomes its own lifting body characteristic. But then it travels along with that at very fast speeds, making it very, very stable and safe. But I would never fucking probably ever do it just because it's like, that seems insane. If I fuck this up in any aspect, going almost Mach, and it's effectively a bunch of bird like bones that could just easily rip apart, I don't really want to try. You know what I mean? But on the other hand, it was like, well, all you do is put a vacuum, in a structure, right? And then all I have to do is go up towards the slipstream, which is in those higher altitudes, right? The 90 and so on. And it's like, well, it's already like 300 something miles an hour. And it's like, well, if I do 230, which I was talking about for the 10K, feet, right? Then it's like, well, yeah. Well, that's basically what it is, because relative air velocity up there is effectively saying that if I'm going 580, just subsonic, I am traveling at roughly 230 miles an hour. And I can easily do that. And I can be at a much higher altitude and get very, very efficient, travel. Right? Now, the problem is that most, people probably don't want you to do that. Right? But I go, yeah, but what if that doesn't matter? You know what I mean? It's like it's really hyper efficient. And also, I can put this essentially on like a dolly or something and then like open it up and then like fill her up, go, buoyancy and then kind of jump off of like a skyscraper or something and get myself, up to like that. And then just whee wherever the fuck I want to go because I can get thousands of miles off of that. You know, because that one then turns into electrostatic and some light into turning into a oxygen and nitrogen as I separate them, but I don't really need to separate them very much. So it's like really I'm just kind of separating them to go into a filtration of a substrate that's kind of like the fuel cell that then creates nitric oxides, right? Which you don't want usually, and you're expending energy, right? It's like yeah, but it's stored chemical energy. So when I store that energy, then it means I can then explosively decompress it and then I can get it back and I can accelerate it while it's compressed in its state and it has a little bit of heat and all that. And then it expands, right? And then I can get more thrust as a result. And now it's more efficient at those higher altitudes, which is great. And that's why it works. Like you said, it wouldn't. Well, I didn't really want to back down from the challenge, but I don't always have to fucking explain things to people like yourself that probably are too stupid to really be something that people around you or even myself would consider someone responsible and mature enough to do this safely. Effectively, you're a person that we shouldn't allow to use this. Person that said the hang glider thing couldn't work. And that's kind of what that is for me. It's like you probably don't want to have someone like that that's like, man, I don't even know how this thing is a thing, and I am not even going to check to make sure everything's ready and not going to disintegrate and all that. And I'm going to stick to my altitude like I'm supposed to. I'm going to do my flight plan and path and all that. Versus, oh god, look at this asshole ruining it for everyone. This is hyper efficient personal travel. Like, essentially, get a skyscraper, jump off of it with a hang glider with the vacuum buoyancy thing, and then now you have personal fucking flying vehicles everywhere that are super cheap to operate and run that just take electric batteries that allow for you with the right, cocoon and pressurization and all that to then, with a little bit of filtration for the carbon dioxide and build up or whatever, travel quite far distances safely with a lot less training like a Cessna pilot, but then I would still want you to have that for what it's worth. That means that I'm also the guy that's like, and yet I don't want you, unless you're someone that knows what they're doing, to do for the memes the fastest hang glider possible at 69,420 feet. Oh yes! Like look at how fast I am, 777 miles an hour. 69,420. It's still funny though. I would love it. I'd love to see that in the Guinness World Records books. Look at me, 69,420 feet, 777 miles an hour. I'm supersonic. But I'm also the other guy on the other side where it's like, and yet you probably are someone that knows what they're doing. Please don't be a person that does this. If you don't, I don't want like this idea to basically just go nowhere. You know what I mean? It's like, while it is kind of like rocket fuel, it's not. It's really more of a scram ramjet that uses a vacuum point that helps in the center where the plasma is to plasmify things, right? But then it goes even lower pressure as it goes towards. Anyways, moving on. You could store oxygen on board, and you could store a lot of stuff like that. That would mean that you could go into orbit. Now, we're also talking about the airship vacuum thing, and then you have to seal the intake at the front, which is fine. I mean, that's movable parts. You can do it. But that also means like you're a person that's in effectively a rigid vacuum, like hang glider that got you like a rocket balloon, very high altitude, like the highest you can reasonably achieve, right? And then you tried to orbit, right? Like you tried to orbit after that, yeah, because it's a bit dangerous, you know. I have to tell you, it's a little dangerous, but you know, also it's the cheapest. No offense to Virgin Galactic and Elon Musk's SpaceX and Blue Origin or any of that. It would be the fastest way and the cheapest way to get individual space flight travel as a space plane, airship, spaceship thing, right? Which now means like you can travel anywhere in the world cheaply, but you'll be watched most likely tremendously by all the satellites and everything else that everybody really kind of has. Like, who is this motherfucker? It looks like a tiny little fucking hang glider. Guys! Oh god! I did a bad burn! And what, you want one of us to save your ass? That's kinda on you, dude. I still have battery! How much food you got? How much fucking air? We might be able to get your ass. Like a few days. Fine. You know, we have flight computers now for the orbital things and stuff, right? Why didn't you use one of those? I don't know what you're talking about. It was you, the immature one, wasn't it? No! And that's the hang glider thing. Please like, subscribe, share, all that. Bye!